All right, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for watching. We are going to go over USA ePay in order to ensure that your transactions clear at the best possible rate. Where we are now is I am logged into a demo account. And I wanted to show you this dashboard. Now I've already set this up so it will not look like this when you first log in. However, you will notice this little puzzle piece up here. It's a widget menu. When you click on it, these drop down and it allows you to toggle on and off the various widgets that are available. The two most important ones are the transactions and the current batch. You can turn on the clock if you want. We do not recommend you turn on the simple charge because that will not enable you necessarily to clear your transactions at the best possible rate because it doesn't collect all of the information that you need. So I toggle that off just so it isn't something that is used. And then we can just click on the widget menu and it disappears. First thing that I do want to go over with you is the settings because we want to make sure that you configure the account to work for you and your business. So we are going to go through all of these various menus, but we're going to start here in settings so you know exactly what is available to you. In general, we have our basic system settings, receipt settings. So receipt settings means that you would get copied on every receipt. Rows returned per page means if you do a search, is it going to show 20 rows or is it going to show more? I happen to like to see it all as much as possible on one screen, but not everyone does. Your customer database and recurring billing settings. I do want to make a note that everything in this system is Pacific time. So you want to be very careful when you are setting any times that you accommodate for your time zone. There are also some very generic product database settings as well as batch settings. It is very important that you make sure you have some type of automatic batch set up. If this says none, it means that none of your transactions will batch and you will not receive funding for those transactions. There are various options available. By default, unless you specify a time to us when you send in your paperwork, it will be 24 hours after the first authorization is on the account. So 24 hours after the first live authorization, not 24 hours after the first transaction ever, because once you close out a batch, maybe you don't do a transaction for a couple of days, and that fresh transaction in that batch, that is what the counter is for. You can also specify email addresses for someone to receive the email confirmation of the batch. And if there is an error when the batch is being submitted, you can also indicate the same or a different email. Let's go ahead and go over to the merchant level settings. Merchant being you, which means you can fully customize the system for yourself. You can put a logo, optional of course. You can also fill out all of the information displayed here on the screen. This is information that your clients will see on invoices and receipts and communication from the system. Next up is users. But before I head over to the users, I want to quickly take a look at roles because these two tie together. You can add a role which will allow you to set very specific permissions for each and every single one of your employees. So it is much easier to assign a role to someone to give them permissions than it is to assign individual permissions to everyone to make sure Sally and Jack both have the same. This is the best way to facilitate that. So those are just some of the options that are available. You notice that all of these options here are identical to what's over here. So if you needed to know, well, what does the product database mean, you could always just close out and go over to the product database and see exactly what it's all about before assigning those permissions. Users, same thing. This is where you would be able to add a user. We highly recommend that everyone who accesses the system has their own unique login account. You want to make sure that no one has access to, other than your primary admin, to the master account, which is the information that you will receive once the account is set up. This is made by a little check mark. You can create additional master accounts, but it's not recommended that you provide a master account with full admin permissions to anyone who should not have access to set up new users and modify the settings in the system. All right, next up, we're going to go take a look at receipts. There are a lot of default template receipts available, which are mostly via email, although if you were doing card present, it would print out a receipt. These are highly customizable. This is something that can be done and taken at any time that you can go ahead and update those if you like. The defaults are perfect. It will automatically include your company information, and anything you might have put in the merchant section will be there, including your logo. Payment forms are if you send a invoice to a client, what they would specifically see when they come in to make a payment. You can use the default one, but if you wanted to customize it, you absolutely could customize what your specific client will see when they go to do the payment. There is no need to do that. The system works great outside of the box. API keys are valuable if you need to connect this to a third party, such as a shopping cart or a website or something of that nature. There are a lot of systems that are compatible that integrate USA ePay into them. Perhaps you do use one and perhaps you don't, but it is definitely an option so that you can go ahead and get data synced to and from other databases. Applications is just an extension of that. These are applications that have authorization to USA ePay, which will enable you to disable and enable all of those. Custom fields is a fun little item, and we're just going to enter in a fun little field here, and we're just going to call it hello. So custom fields are additional information that you may want to track in the system for your clients or for your payments. I'm just going to go ahead and turn that on so we could see that later. Device Manager is very handy because you can receive and use swipers, which work on a mobile phone. There are also Bluetooth printers. There are a lot of different options available where you can take this from e-commerce. You could take it to trade shows. You can do it as card present as a retail store. The sky is the limit when it comes to this system, and it's very customizable for anything that you could potentially want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the dashboard. All of the settings are taken care of there. We went through them all. You do have a fraud module. There's a lot of information available in here. By default, nothing is set up. It is something that you do need to go through to make sure, specifically if you're connecting this to a website or some type of where you're not keying in the information for the payment, to make sure that you are not getting any fraudulent information. One of the things that fraudsters will do is they will find a website that has no fraud controls, and they will run transactions through your payment forms just to verify if a card is legitimate, which can be costly for you as a merchant because those are considered authorization attempts. So it is always a good idea to set this up. We highly recommend that you contact USA ePay to go through all of the modules and how they apply to your business and which ones you should go ahead and take care of and set up from day one. Before we do anything, we are going to go over to the customer database. It is not necessarily required that you add your customers. However, if you have recurring customers, it is something that we highly recommend. They don't need to have recurring billing, but their data and information is saved here in the system so that it is less data entry for you when you are doing an order, which enables you to have level 2, level 3 processing. So this is all of the information that would automatically come into the fields when you go ahead and select them. You can save a card. You don't have to, but you can. If you set up recurring billing, you do have to have a payment method indicated, and you do have to set up a billing schedule if you want to go ahead and do recurring billing. Okay. Why is it not closing? There we go. Quick sale. This is a way to go ahead and do a quick payment, which is not recommended because it's not going to have any of the information that you're going to need in order to clear your transactions at the more favorable interchange level. Quick refunds you can do, however, sometimes it is best to click on the individual invoice or payment and refund it from there, which only works if you have stored the card in USA ePay system. Billing history. As you can see here, you can go through and see all of the transactions that have occurred for this particular client. And here is our custom field. So the custom field carries over into the customer section, which enables you to add maybe very specific information that you want to track that isn't necessarily anything that is going to apply to the payment, but maybe it's something that you want to know. Maybe it's a birthday or whatever the case is. There are reports available to where you can run that information. You can also import clients. You can add clients here. You can look at various dates to determine for the recurring billing if you do have that feature enabled. Next up, we are going to go take a look at products. Again, this is optional, but in adding products, it can assist you with having to put less information in at the time of sale, because even though you will save by clearing your transactions at a target or better interchange level, it does require information to be transmitted with that transaction. So if you have a repeat customer or a very specific product or service that you utilize a lot, it is highly recommended that you go ahead and add that customer and or product. So what you see here is I just created a default shipping one. Let's go ahead and add a new product real quick so you can see how awesome it is. And we are going to call them this product awesome. The manufacturer is, let's call it Willy Wonka because chocolate is great. We are going to call it chocolate. Product ID, well, it doesn't have one, but general rule of thumb is if there's a blank field for this, you definitely want to fill it in. We don't really need a SKU or a UPC, although we can generate one if we go ahead and add in some characters and some numbers, which is really cool. So this is something that you could scan if you so chose to. There are categories. I'm going to go ahead and select the test one. You can add new categories as you like. A lot of these items are very specific to very specific industries, and again, they may not always apply to you, but sometimes it is a good idea to go ahead and put information in there anyways. It really just does depend on your industry. Units of measure, let's go with ounce, or we can just do the abbreviation. The weight of this is, we're going to say it is 6. Shipping weight, now let's still go with 6. The price, let's say it is $1. Wholesale price, well, let's give them 75 cents. List price, price being what we pay. And then let's put $1.50 here. This is also an inventory system, so you can add items and mark them against inventory if a limited quantity is available. Or you can just leave it as just a standard product. So, or you can make it a virtual product if it were, say, a service versus something physically that you're going to ship. All right. Here you'll notice inventories. You can have various warehouses, how many you have on hand. It's very, very, very detail oriented. You can run your entire business off of this. So let's go ahead and save that again so we can close it out. So now we have 2 lovely little products here. The next step, we're going to skip over batches even though it's next up on the list, and we're going to go to transactions. I'm going to click that little plus sign, and you'll notice that you have various different transactions you can do. You have a new order, simple charge, auth only, refund, and voice authorization. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what all of these mean. So a voice authorization is where you contact the voice auth line with the card You give them all the information, including your merchant number, and you get an authorization. This is important if you don't have connectivity. Say you have a sale and you're just not in a place to where you can actually log in to take the payment. You can call the voice authorization line and get an authorization code, which is present for any transaction that you do. You put all of that information in the voice auth and it will capture it and batch it out with your batch in this system. You do need to make sure you have all of this information in order to go in here. So you do need to have the card number, expiration date, the authorization code that you received, as well as all of the cardholder information. So this is more of a temporary in case of emergencies. I have no connectivity, my internet's down, I have no way to get to the website. This is how I can take this order. Refund would allow you to either refund a recent transaction or you can create an open refund, which will allow you to process a refund to a card. Do note that in many cases, an offsetting sale is required to process a refund. So if you find that your settings are not allowing you to do an open refund, go ahead and give our office a call and we can assist you with that. An authorization only is very similar to a voice auth with the exception that you're processing it here in the system. An authorization only means that that is all that you are doing. You are verifying that the cardholder has the funds available. Until you capture the transaction, which I will show you in batches, until you actually capture that transaction, it will not actually pay you. Auth only is a good way to say, well, I am going to loan you this equipment and there is a $500 deposit, so you're going to do an auth only to make sure that they have that. If you return the equipment within 24 hours, the fee is only $25. So you would go ahead and authorize only for the 500 to make sure it's available and you can capture it if the equipment's not returned. And then later on, if they do return it, you can actually adjust the authorization only amount to the correct amount and then capture it for settlement. Simple charge is just a way to quickly charge a credit card. It will not allow you to clear at the best possible interchange. It, in fact, will probably have you clear at the highest interchange available. This is just very basic standard information that you would enter into any payment form that you have. We do not recommend you use Simple Charge unless you are confident it is not a business or purchase card or government issued card that you are accepting. So this would be fine for consumer-based cards. Where you will more than likely live is under New Order. And this, as you can see, has a lot more information that it is asking you for. There are little settings here that you can use to go ahead and customize this form a little bit. You'll notice that some of these settings were also in the settings menu. So we can have it auto-populate invoice numbers, which is actually recommended. You definitely need to have an invoice number, whether or not it's a real number or it's a fake number. If you have physical invoice numbers that you want to correlate to the system, then definitely go ahead and uncheck auto-populate. But if you don't have specific invoice numbers, you can just have it auto-populate an invoice number. Offset value means it will skip. You have line item. Most level 2, level 3 cards do require a wait. You do want to make sure that you have that selected, as well as tax. Whether or not the tax applies is entirely up to you and where you live and where you do business and where the cardholder is and what type of product and service. Cash payment, I have it enabled because we will be processing a cash payment instead of a credit card here for you to see. So here is the order. So what I am going to do is I am going to add my item here, which was awesome. Oh, actually, in the product database, we need to have the product ID. So I am 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go back over. Why is it not adding my order? All right. We're going to cut all of this out while I figure this out. Let's go back here. Products. See the name. I don't understand why it's not. Oh, maybe because I don't have any quantity on hand. Okay. I bet you that's what it is. I'm going to set it to virtual. Okay. All right, so we're going to start that section all over. All right, let's go ahead and add an item. I don't know what just happened there. All right, let's go ahead and add the product that we set up before. As you can see, it's already pre-filled everything based upon what we added. Let's say this particular client doesn't get taxed, so I'm going to remove the tax, or I can quickly add it back and change it. You can either do a flat amount or a percentage. So let's go ahead and do the percentage and add the tax back in. If you wanted to add a little description, you absolutely could. And then we don't have anything else on this screen. Now, keeping in mind, you definitely need to itemize every single thing because it is required for level 3 to itemize every single item. We're only going to do one item on this particular one. Notice it auto-populated the invoice number. Let's go ahead and give it the same PO number and the same order number because, again, all of the data that you put in here is important whether or not it makes sense to you or it's something that you can utilize for your tracking. It is highly recommended that you go ahead and take care of adding all of that information. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search for the test client that we have in here. Notice all of their information's already pre-filled. It makes it so easy to go ahead and place this order. If you were to add a new client in here, you could check this box and it would automatically save the client for you, so you don't actually have to save all of your products and save all of your customers before you start using the system. You can use it right out of the box and add all of that stuff as you go along. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Now here is where you could swipe if you were retail and you had one of the swipers attached to your computer, which is great if you can, but a lot of clients are unable to do that and they need to do this as a moto or as a transaction that's done either through the phone or through the web. If it's through the web, then all of this information would actually be collected by your shopping cart or your e-commerce checkout page, and that information would be used through the API keys that we looked at before into the system, and you wouldn't actually need to do any of this. But because, and here you could actually save the credit card if you wanted to. Here is where you can also authorize only. If you just wanted to maybe check to make sure and you needed to verify shipping and add that later, you could click this to authorize the base amount, come back to the client and say it's $50 shipping. You could go back to the order screen and add in the actual shipping cost that's associated with it. It won't pull up because I don't have it set up in the inventory. But I'm going to go ahead and do a payment here as cash, just so that you can see how it works. I'm going to click exact. You can put the different amounts here. Say if I put $5, it actually tells me exactly, oh, I added it up. It added it up. Let's do that again. Let's start back at credit. For this one, we're just going to run cash just so you can see how the process goes through. So we have here that the total is $1.07. Say we were handed $5, it will actually tell you exactly how much change to process, which is great. And then you hit process and you get a lovely little confirmation here where you can print the receipt. You can also email the receipt. You can do a new transaction, or you can click on Batch Manager, which is where I want to take you, so that this is what you would see if it were credit card processing, transactions that are ready and available for you to go ahead and close it out and get paid for. So you can manually close the batch at any time by clicking Close Batch. Queue transactions are transactions which are authorizations only. So would be where you would be able to capture them, and you notice there's a little button up here once you check them off to go ahead and capture. And then we're going to go back to the batch manager itself. Unfortunately, I don't have any transactions here for you to see, but it would show you all of the transactions that were available. You can also go to batch history, and you can look at the current or previous closed, or show all of your previous batches. You have batch summary, which gives you just basic information in regards to your current batch. There are also some options here as well, where you can print or email the details that are listed on this page, or you can export it. There is one other handy little feature that I want to show you, and this is Upload Manager. So say if you were using a system that acquired all of the information, you could use the Upload Manager in order to upload a batch. It is highly not recommended unless you are in a PCI secure environment and have the certification to facilitate that, to ensure that no credit cards are breached during that process. But there you have it, a quick overview of the system and everything that goes along. I do want to show you one other really cool feature that I kind of alluded to earlier, and that's invoices. And invoices, and it just... And you can see here under the invoices that this one has already been viewed. I did send this out earlier and view it. But invoices are great if you're not collecting payment directly and you're actually billing it out to your cardholder or your client. So all of the same information is here. I'm going to go ahead and select the demo client that I have. I'm going to say that the shipping is the same as the billing, and you notice it pre-fills everything here. I can go ahead and add an invoice number, PO number, which I'm just going to duplicate. I can set the terms to be anything that I want. Let's say they have 10 days to pay. I don't necessarily need to worry about a due date, but you can put a due date in here if you so choose, if you don't have any specific terms set. Here's where you would go ahead and add your products and line items, just as we did before in the new order. The only difference between the order screen and this screen is you're not going to be collecting payment. This will actually send an email to your client, and they will be able to go through the payment form and make a payment itself. So notice that this note will be visible in the client email as well as the client customer page. So you can say anything you like here. You can say thank you, and they will see this as well. This tells all the information that's totaled from up above. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck tax because this one doesn't have tax. I guess it's not available because I have it defaulted in the system. There we go. Now their taxes there. Footer, this is just information that you can again include on the invoice itself, and then you click create, and it generates the invoice and sends it to your client. Now, say they call you and they want to pay it over the phone, well, you can just come back to the invoice and pay. You can denote it as you took a credit card on a different device or a different processor, you took an external check, or cash. And that would enable you to take the payment itself. But otherwise, your cardholder can just come in and take the payment. To take a look and see what it looks like, let's go ahead and see. So this will be what your client will see. They can also download it as a handy little PDF. All right, but the invoice is just saved right now. It has not been sent. So in order to send the email, you do have to go down to the bottom and click Send. I'm going to finalize it and mark it as sent, and now it is sent. So let's go back over to invoices real quick. All right, so you see this one was viewed and this one was sent. So the moment they open the invoice and view it, you will be able to see that here. The moment it is paid by them, you will be able to see that here. So it is a handy tool that you can use. Oh, well, they viewed it, but they haven't paid it yet. Maybe I need to call them. So again, this system is very, very intuitive. It has a lot of features and functions that basically any merchant would be able to appreciate. And I really do hope that you enjoyed this demo today, and we look forward to doing business with you.